Have you gotten a list of IDs in Excel to query data with, only to realize that the list of IDs is not all in the same format? My name is Clint Huffman. I'm currently an analytics manager, and I'm going to go through step by step and walk you through how I'm going to clean the data and crosswalk it to a single usable format in Excel. So let's get started. So I've got this fabricated list of IDs here, so we don't have to worry about any sensitive information being shared. But I wanted to simulate a realistic business context. So let's say I work for a health insurance company, and I'm asked to pull together a data report looking at various KPIs for these members. But in order to do that, I need to put all these member IDs in the same format to make it easier for me to query with in SQL. So what I want to be able to do, I'm going to do this in 6 steps. So step 1 is going to be just to observe the data. What are some things that I can learn about this data that's going to make it easier for me to map out how I'm going to clean the data set here? So the things that I'm seeing right off the bat is that some of these IDs are different lengths. I've got some that are a length of 4 characters, some that are double, some that are 5 characters long, it looks like. So that's going to be significant to know. The next thing I'm noticing is I notice these little green flags in the upper left-hand corner that indicates to me that this is a text data type, which is different from the others. So I've got some that are text and some that are not text. I'm also going to hit Control down, and I want to understand how many records am I dealing with here. So I've got nearly 5,000 records. And it doesn't seem to be any gaps in the data set, so that's good too. So I'll scroll back up to the top with Control up. So as an analyst, I want to find a way to automate this, right? I don't want to have to go through line by line and convert each one to the data type that I need to. I want to automate this as much as possible. So now that I've observed some things about the data, the first thing I want to do is I want to select the first cell here and do Control-Shift down to select the entire data set. And I want to convert the data type. And so I'm going to go to Data and then Text to Columns, leave it on Delimited, leave it on Tab, and I'm going to convert them all to a general data type. So the reason I like doing the data type conversion first is 2 reasons. First, it removes any hidden spaces if there are any. And number 2, it will make removing duplicates easier. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is if I have the same ID in 2 different data types, it will see them as different. So we want to avoid that issue. So I'm going to Control-Shift down to select the entire data set again, and go to Data and then Remove Duplicates, and I'll click OK. Looks like it removed 4 of our duplicates. Very good. And just as a validation for myself, I'm going to go home, do conditional formatting, and I'm going to highlight these. I want to highlight duplicate values. I want them to show up as red if there are any in my data set, and I can just do a quick cursory overview. I would see any red popping out if there was a duplicate value. And just in a cursory view, I don't see any duplicate values. So all right, so the next step then will be to find out the lengths of these IDs. So if I can spell. So I'm going to use the length function, and I'm going to copy this formula down. And then I'm going to click up here and hit Control-Shift-L, which is the hotkey to put filters on these fields. It's going to make it easier for me to see how many different lengths of IDs am I dealing with here. So I've got some that are length of 4, some that are length of 5, some that are length of 10. So it's going to be helpful to know as I go forward. So now at this point, I need to do my due diligence and find out what are the IDs at my company that are these lengths. And so let's say that I've done that, and sure enough, there are 3 IDs at my company, and one of them is the member ID, which is probably what the stakeholder here thought they were sending me. And then there's a personal ID, and then there's an important ID, very important. So we got to make sure we have that important ID. All right, and so I found that the member ID is a length of 4, the personal ID is a length of 5, and the important ID is a length of 10. So what I want to do now is I want to put these descriptors next to each of these IDs because I want to know which ones I'm dealing with, which ones are which. And I'm going to use a VLOOKUP to do this. I'll create a new field here called ID type. So I like VLOOKUP. We could use other functions like index match, but I'm going to use VLOOKUP here. As long as you understand how VLOOKUP works, it has some narrow parameters. So a couple things to think about. VLOOKUP only works if the data types match. So that's one reason why we converted the data type. And if there are hidden spaces in your IDs, then VLOOKUP will error. So we want the data types to be the same, and we don't want any spaces for VLOOKUP to work. Also, your data needs to be structured correctly. And you'll see what I mean when I say this. I want the field that I'm looking up to be on the left, and the corresponding value that I'm trying to gather from it needs to be on the right. So hopefully this will make more sense when I do it. So I want to put those descriptors next to these ID types. So I'm going to use a VLOOKUP, and I want to look up this number in this cell range. I'm going to F4 lock the cells because I don't want my red cells to move down the sheet as the formula is copied down. I want the value in the second column, and I just type 0. You could type false, but I want an exact match. 0 is faster, so I just type 0. And all right, now I've successfully pulled the descriptor for each of those. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-L twice to put the filters back on, and I just want to see if there's any errors, and there aren't, so all of them mapped correctly, which is good. All right. So the next thing that I need to do is I want to actually crosswalk all these IDs over to a single ID so that it can make my life easier when I query it. So I want to convert these all to the important ID. And in order to do that, what I'm going to need to do is I need to query all of my members, and I need to pull their member ID, their personal ID, and their important ID all in the same table. So I've got one member for each line, and then I can pull the corresponding values and crosswalk this. And I've got my data set now. So you can see I've got my list of members, and I've got their member IDs, their personal IDs, and their important IDs. So now I'm going to work on crosswalking the IDs into a single format so that I can query with them. And again, I'm going to use VLOOKUP. We could use other functions. Maybe we'll do another one in a future video. So I'm going to VLOOKUP, and I want to look up the ID in column A. And I want to select these, and then I'm going to Control-Shift down and lock the cells again. I want the value in the third column, which is column D, because column B is my first column. And we'll copy that formula down. All right. So we've got some NA errors here, but that's okay. Right now, I've solved for the member IDs. So all the member IDs should have a corresponding important ID. So the next one that I need to solve for is the personal ID, the one that's a length of 5. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to say if error. So if that formula errors, I want to do another VLOOKUP, and I want to look up this ID in this cell range again, except I'm going to go to the top, and I'll Control-Shift down, lock the cells again. This time I want the value in the second column because column C is the first column and column D is the second column. I want an exact match, and I'm going to close out the formula, and then I will copy it down. And now we've got less errors. So all of the personal IDs should have the corresponding important ID now. All right, last step. I want to get the final ID crosswalked. And in order to do that, I'm going to say if error. So if these two formulas error, just give me the ID that's in column A because I know that that's an important ID and I hadn't crosswalked it yet. So I will copy that down, and I'll hit Control-Shift-L twice to put filters on, and I'm going to look for an NA error. I could type in the hashtag. Don't see anything. Don't see any errors. So successfully crosswalked my IDs from different data types, from dirty data to clean data, into the single format that I can now query with. And just as a bonus, I'm going to put it in SQL ready format. So I'm going to say equals, double quote, single quote, double quote, say that 5 times fast, ampersand, put the ID, ampersand, double quote, single quote, comma, double quote. And now I can copy this formula down, and now I can copy and paste this list of IDs into SQL and to my query so it'll run successfully. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.